Hello, and in this video we are going to specifically talk about narrative essay thesis statements. They are fairly specific to this type of essay. One also important thing is in other essays, it's best to write the introduction last. However, with a narrative essay, because we know what the background is already, that generally it's okay to start with the introduction because we are just establishing the story that we already know. So unlike other kinds of essay, you can write an introduction first for a narrative essay. So let's think about the types of thesis statement for a narrative essay. We can really say there's two types. There's the inciting incident that begins the main narrative and the point of the essay and why it's significant. So thinking about why the reader should care. So inciting incident means the situation or the action that really begins the main story. We will look at some examples of this in a moment, but the inciting action, it begins that story. So something happens. Maybe you receive a phone call that begins this whole adventure, or you meet somebody, or you lose something, or there is something which kind of begins this situation. And again, the second version, kind of what's the point, the overall point of the essay? Why is it significant? Why should the reader care about what you are going to say? So here's an example. So I'll give you a moment just to read this one. Okay, so this is an interesting combination of the two, where we have the inciting incidents, the beginning incident, which is the death of his grandmother, and we have the kind of overall point of the essay. So I had to learn how to deal with death. So this is an interesting example of combining these two things together. So we have the incident that begins it, and we have the kind of reason that we should care. So let's look at some other examples of the inciting incident. Now, as I watched the bus driver set my luggage on the airport sidewalk, I realized that my frustration had only just begun. Okay, so in this case, we know we are going to hear about a very frustrating experience, or a very frustrating journey, perhaps, because we're at an airport. And so the first of these is going to start with the bus driver and the luggage. Okay, so something is going to happen with these. So here we are. So this would be the final sentence of the introduction, and what it's doing is it's giving us that first action which begins the main body. So the next paragraph will talk about the main parts of the story. However, this inciting incident is going to be about caused by the luggage or caused by the driver, and things are only going to get worse. Okay, let's have a look at another example. I wanted my mother to watch me race down the steep hill, so I called out her name and then nudged my bike forward. Okay, so again, this is the beginning. This is the beginning moment of a story, so we can guess that something exciting or terrible or disastrous is going to happen on the way down the hill. And so he's called his mother's name, and she's going to watch him do something amazing or terrible. But this is the first action that's kind of beginning the main part of the story. So this is the inciting incident. Okay, next example. Because his pride would not allow him to apologize, Ken now had to fight the bully, and he was pretty sure that he would not win. Okay, so we've got two things here. We've got a lack or a excess of pride, so he's not going to apologize. But now he's going to have a fight. Okay, and again, we're creating interest, you see, by saying he's pretty sure he would not win. So that means we don't know. Is this story going to be surprising and he does win? Or is it going to be as expected and the result is going to be quite not good for Ken? So again, we're setting it up, and hopefully you can see from these thesis statements, we can actually get a really good feeling about what this paragraph or what this narrative is going to be about. So this is a really good example of like the specifics of how we use this main idea, okay, and it controls everything that's in the thesis, in the main body. Okay, so these are examples of the inciting incident. Let's have a look at some examples of the main point and why it is significant. Okay, so these are not about actions particularly, but they're trying to give an overall sense of why this is important. What is the significance of this story? So without having to make this choice, I would be trapped in my hometown forever. Okay, so we're kind of getting a sense of what are the consequences. Well, the consequences could be living in the same hometown forever. So it sounds like the writer does not want to do that, or for some reason the hometown is not a place that they want to live in. And they're setting up that this choice is a big choice. So I knew the decision to leave home would set me on a path that I could finally control. Okay, so we know that the significance of this story is about how they perhaps don't have control of their life before making this decision, and therefore leaving home is somehow giving them this control that they don't have. Okay, so again, we're not talking in detail about the story, but we're getting a sense of why something is important and generally what we're going to hear about for the rest of the essay or the rest of the story. If I didn't get the document submitted in time, my entire future would be thrown into chaos. Okay, so again, we've got this kind of larger point here. So we know that they need to submit, we know that there is a deadline, and we know that there is a significant consequence to missing that deadline or losing the document. So again, we're giving the reader a sense of why the narrative is important and why they should care, and also kind of what to look for, what to feel during the writing, during the narrative. They should keep in mind, in this case, that there is a deadline and that the document is important and that the future kind of depends on this. So some things to avoid with the thesis statement: don't be mysterious or cryptic. So it's not a huge mystery. So for example, in the previous section, you wouldn't say, if I didn't do one thing in time, then things would be different. That's too mysterious. Okay, so we need to be a little bit specific about what we're talking about. Yeah, don't write the thesis statement like a concluding sentence. So, for example, after that day, I learned that making big decisions was just part of becoming an adult. So, this has detail in it, that's for sure, but it kind of sounds like it's wrapping up the idea. It sounds like it's finishing the idea. So, yeah, don't be mysterious and cryptic. You can be specific, but you're giving the overall point and the significance, or you're giving the inciting incident. Let's have a look at an example. We're going to look at three different types or three different thesis statements for these paragraphs. So I'll give you a moment just to read the paragraph itself. So here we go. Okay, so what we can see is that night, however, as I fell asleep, I had the uncomfortable feeling that something was not quite right. So connecting back to our introductions, hopefully you can see that there's a really nice kind of funnel in here. So it starts off generally talking about the email, and then it gets more specific about what they don't believe, that they deleted it, and now this incident. So I fell asleep, I had the uncomfortable feeling something was not quite right. So again, this is setting up nicely the theme for the writing. So we can guess that in this case, maybe there's going to be lots of bad luck happening. Let's have another look, or let's have a look at a different thesis statement. So we have exactly the same introduction, so nicely funneling in. That night, however, as I fell asleep, I decided to challenge my superstitious personality once and for all. So he said that, usually he doesn't believe in this kind of thing. So he's actually going to kind of go downstairs maybe and or maybe change his mind. Maybe he actually becomes more superstitious. Maybe he becomes more of a believer in bad luck or good luck or things being cursed. So again, this sentence kind of sets up what is the overall point of the essay. It doesn't give lots of detail, but equally it's not mysterious either. Okay, so it's not being mysterious and cryptic. It's actually being fairly detailed. Okay, but again, it's not revealing too much about the actual story. Okay, let's have a look at one more example. Okay, so exactly the same introduction. Okay, so we're going off the previous sentence of deleting a superstitious email with one click of a mouse. So saying, it was a small action that changed forever how I think about luck and negative events in my life. So this is the overall idea of luck and negative events. Okay, so again, maybe they change their mind in a different way, that they become more superstitious, excuse me. However, it all started with that kind of click of the mouse. So it was a small action that had a big, significant effect. And again, this is what we're really trying to get in with these thesis statements for narrative essays. So that was just a quick look at the specifics of a narrative essay, thesis statement. Almost everything else is very similar to regular English writing. The thesis statement is just a little bit different. So that's why we had a look at that today. So thank you for listening. I hope it was useful.